As Phaedrus and Socrates stroll through a stream and settle into a shaded spot, they both reflect on how out of place Socrates seems in a rural setting. Socrates admits as much, saying that he prefers the company of people, since he learns nothing from trees or the countryside, but finds insight among those who live in the city. He then jokingly gives Phaedrus credit for managing to lure him out of his usual haunts, comparing himself to a hungry beast tempted by a treat. In the same way, he says, if someone waves a scroll of speeches before him, they could lead him across all of Attica and beyond. At that point, Phaedrus begins to recite a speech by Lysias. Opening with a line that expresses hope things will work out well between them, he lays out the argument that it is wiser to favor someone who is not in love, rather than someone who is. He argues that such a person is more reasonable and clear-headed. This kind of friendship avoids gossip, is free from jealousy, and allows for more potential partners. The non-lover, he suggests, is not mentally unwell or ruled by passion, and is more capable of repaying affection in a balanced way, rather than being driven by desperation. He finishes by saying that his speech has gone on long enough, and invites any questions in case he has missed something important. Socrates, trying to compliment Phaedrus, claims to be overcome with delight, and says it is entirely Phaedrus' doing. He notes that the way the speech has lit up Phaedrus' face proves how deeply he understands the topic, and that Socrates has no choice but to follow him into this wild, inspired state. Detecting Socrates' subtle irony, Phaedrus gently asks him not to mock him. Socrates answers that he is still deeply impressed, but adds that he believes he could offer an even more impressive speech than the one Phaedrus just recited. When Phaedrus pleads to hear Socrates' version, Socrates resists, unwilling to deliver the speech. Phaedrus, not giving up, warns him with a playful threat. He's younger and stronger, and Socrates ought to understand what that implies and stop acting coy. In the end, Phaedrus makes a serious vow, swearing by the plane tree that he will never share another speech with Socrates if Socrates doesn't agree. Only then does Socrates, covering his head, give in. Unlike Lysias, who simply listed points, Socrates begins by setting the framework. All men are drawn to beauty, but only some are moved by love. He explains that each person is guided by two forces. One is the natural craving for pleasure, and the other is the developed sense of judgment that aims for the good. When one follows reason and aims for what is best, he is acting sensibly. When one is led blindly by pleasure, without rational thought, he falls into a state of excess and disgrace. Depending on which desire dominates, people chase different things. A person ruled by hunger becomes a glutton, and so forth. The particular longing to find joy in beauty, when awakened by the sight of beauty in the human form, is known as love, eros. Socrates then says that he feels possessed by something divine, as though the local nymphs are about to carry him into madness. He presses on with the argument. The issue, he claims, is that someone overtaken by desire wants the beloved to be shaped in ways that satisfy his own cravings, rather than in ways that help the boy grow. This stifles the young man's learning, undermines his health, and prevents him from growing up to form a family or mature in his own right. All this happens because the lover seeks gratification, not the beloved's good. Eventually, when reason returns and love's madness fades, the lover will abandon his promises and oaths. Phaedrus believes that the bond between lover and beloved is among the greatest blessings. This connection offers both affection and mentorship. The beloved, with such a figure to impress, is careful not to fall into disgrace. To disappoint the lover would be a source of shame, so the youth behaves his best. With shame held at bay, pride takes its place, the pride of delighting someone so dear. That, in turn, encourages learning and guidance. By contrast, the non-lover lacks this kind of involvement, ruled instead by calculated reasoning and not by longing for beauty or joy. Sensing that he is on the verge of being fully overcome by the spirits in this place, Socrates declares he must leave before Phaedrus tempts him into an even greater misstep. But as he is about to go, Socrates is halted by a familiar divine sign, his personal daimonion, which always appears just before he's about to do something wrong. A voice, as if from the very place they sit, forbids him to depart until he makes amends for having offended the divine. Socrates then confesses that he finds both previous speeches deeply flawed. He criticizes Lysias for being repetitive, unfocused, and too interested in display. Socrates admits he has some ability as a prophet, not a skilled one, but skilled enough to know where he went wrong. If love is divine, or even something like a god, as both he and Phaedrus have agreed, then it cannot be what the earlier speeches portrayed, as something harmful or base. With that, Socrates uncovers his head and promises to purify himself in the spirit of the Muses, preparing to deliver a new speech, this time in praise of the lover. Socrates opens by reflecting on the nature of madness. If all forms of madness were harmful, then the earlier speeches would have been justified. But in truth, certain forms of madness, when granted by the gods, are among the greatest blessings humans can receive. He identifies 4 distinct types of this divine madness, known as theomania, each originating from a different deity. From Apollo comes the madness of prophecy, from Dionysus, the madness of sacred rites and initiations, from the Muses, the madness that inspires poetry, and from Aphrodite and Eros, the madness of love. To challenge the earlier claims that love is something shameful or irrational, Socrates now sets out to demonstrate that this last kind of madness, the madness of love, is in fact a divine gift that brings great benefit to both the lover and the beloved. He remarks that his argument may persuade the truly wise, though perhaps not those merely clever with words. He begins by establishing the soul's immortality. The soul, he argues, is defined by its ability to move itself. Unlike physical objects, which are moved by external forces, the soul moves from within. This capacity makes it the source of all motion. Since it is self-moving and not dependent on anything else, it cannot have come into being, and therefore it cannot be destroyed. It exists eternally, always in motion. As Plato writes in the Phaedrus, that which moves something else, and is moved by something else, in ceasing from movement ceases from living. So only that which moves itself, because it does not abandon itself, never stops moving. But it is also source and first principle of movement for the other things which move. A first principle is something which does not come into being. For all that comes into being must come into being from a first principle, but a first principle itself cannot come into being from anything at all. For if a first principle came into being from anything, it would not do so from a first principle. Since it is something that does not come into being, it must also be something which does not perish. For if a first principle is destroyed, neither will it ever come into being from anything itself, nor will anything else come into being from it, given that all things must come into being from a first principle. It is in this way, then, that that which moves itself is a first principle of movement. It is not possible for this either to be destroyed or to come into being, or else the whole universe and the whole of that which comes to be might collapse together and come to a halt, and never again have a source from which things will be moved and come to be. And since that which is moved by itself has been shown to be immortal, it will incur no shame to say that this is the essence and the definition of the soul. With this foundation, Socrates introduces the famous allegory of the chariot. He compares the soul to a charioteer driving a pair of winged horses. In the case of the gods, both horses are noble and obedient. For everyone else, the team is mixed. One horse is noble and graceful, the other unruly and base. Being immortal, souls without bodies roam through the heavens as long as their wings remain whole. But when their wings deteriorate, they fall to earth and become embodied in physical forms. These wings, which carry the soul upward, thrive in the presence of divine realities such as truth, beauty, and wisdom. In contrast, Contact with what is ugly or corrupt causes the wings to weaken and disappear. Socrates describes a celestial procession led by Zeus himself, who oversees and governs all. Every god, except for Hestia, the goddess of the hearth, takes part in this procession. The gods, with their well-matched and obedient horses, travel smoothly. But for human souls, the unruly horse resists control and makes the ascent difficult. If it has not been properly disciplined, it will pull the chariot downward toward the earthly realm. As the divine procession reaches its climax, it arrives at the highest boundary of heaven. There, the gods come to rest and, drawn along a circular path, gaze upon the wonders that lie beyond the heavens themselves. According to Socrates, what lies beyond the heavens is exceedingly hard to put into words. It has no color, no form, no solid nature. It is the realm of true being, accessible only to the mind and not to the senses. It is in this place that genuine knowledge resides. The gods find joy and nourishment in contemplating these eternal realities. Filled with bliss, they are carried in a full circle through this region, where they behold justice itself, self-control in its pure form, knowledge unchanging, and other such eternal truths. Once they have completed their journey and feasted upon these sights, they return again within the heavens. The souls that most closely follow the gods are just able to lift themselves up to the edge and glimpse what lies beyond. Their view is partial, as they must struggle with the opposing pulls of their two horses. They sometimes rise and sometimes fall, and their success depends on how well they manage their chariot. Some souls attempt to ascend but fail, overwhelmed by confusion and conflict. Unable to see the truth, they fall back down without having truly encountered reality. Their future path is then guided not by truth, but by their own opinions and assumptions. Plato writes, "This is the life of gods. Of the other souls, the one that follows God best and has come to resemble him most raises the head of its charioteer into the region outside, and is carried round with a revolution, meanwhile being disturbed by its horses and scarcely seeing the things that are, while another now rises, now sinks, and because of the force exerted by its horses sees some things but not others. The remaining souls follow after them, all straining to reach the place above, but unable to do so, and are carried round together under the surface, trampling and jostling one another, each trying to get ahead of the next. So there ensues the greatest confusion among the sweating competitors, and in all of it, through their charioteer's incompetence, many souls are maimed, and many have their wings all broken. All of them with great labor depart without achieving a sight of what is, and afterwards feed on what only appears to nourish them. Any soul that manages to catch even a partial glimpse of real being is allowed another turn in the divine circuit, where it may gain further insight. Yet, in time, all souls descend again to the world below. Those who beheld more of the eternal forms are placed into more elevated human lives. For example, those who become philosophers and artists have seen the most. They are followed by souls who become rulers, lawgivers, physicians, seers, poets, craftsmen, sophists, and finally those who fall into tyranny. Each soul's place reflects the degree of divine truth it was able to witness. Once embodied, the soul enters a cycle of rebirth. Typically, it takes 10,000 years for a soul to regain its wings and return to its former heavenly place. But there is an exception. The soul of a true philosopher, one who has lived such a life 3 times in succession, is able to return after only 3,000 years. This is because philosophers, having seen more of reality than others, remember it most vividly and long for it with the greatest intensity. They remain the most fully initiated of all souls, turning away from worldly concerns and fixating on the divine. Although others may mock or condemn them for their detachment from human affairs, they do not realize that the lover of wisdom is under divine influence. As Socrates says to Phaedrus, "And I have shown this of all inspirations to be the noblest and highest, and the offspring of the highest to him who has or shares in it, and that he who loves the beautiful is called a lover because he partakes of it." For, as has been already said, every soul of man has in the way of nature beheld true being. This was the condition of her passing into the form of man. But all souls do not easily recall the things of the other world. They may have seen them for a short time only, or they may have been unfortunate in their earthly lot, and, having had their hearts turned to unrighteousness through some corrupting influence, they may have lost the memory of the holy things which once they saw. Few only retain an adequate remembrance of them, and they, when they behold here any image of that other world, are rapt in amazement, but they are ignorant of what this rapture means, because they do not clearly perceive. For there is no light of justice or temperance or any of the higher ideas which are precious to souls in the earthly copies of them. They are seen through a glass dimly, and there are few who, going to the images, behold in them the realities, and these only with difficulty. This state of being overtaken by a divine longing is the fourth kind of sacred madness, the madness of love. One comes to embody this kind of love after encountering beauty on earth, which stirs a memory of the true beauty once beheld beyond the heavens. This recollection causes the wings of the soul to begin growing once more. However, since they are not yet strong enough to ascend, the soul is drawn upward, neglecting all that lies below. This detachment leads others to believe the person is mad. Yet this madness is the most blessed kind of divine possession for anyone who experiences it. When a person is reminded of eternal beauty by the sight of a beautiful youth, he becomes known as a lover. Although every soul must have once glimpsed reality in order to be born human, not all recall it so easily. Those who do are stunned when they encounter a reminder, and are overcome by a powerful recollection of beauty. Socrates says that beauty was among the most brilliant of all things witnessed beyond the heavens, and here on earth it shines most clearly through our sense of sight. Now in the earthly likenesses of justice and temperance and all other prized possessions of the soul there dwells no lustre. Nay, so dull are the organs wherewith men approach their images that hardly can a few behold that which is imaged, but with beauty it is otherwise. As this quote from the Dialogue says, "Beauty it was ours to see in all its brightness in those days when, amidst that happy company, we beheld with our eyes that blessed vision, ourselves in the train of Zeus, others following some other god. Then were we all initiated into that mystery which is rightly accounted blessed beyond all others. Whole and unblemished were we that did celebrate it, untouched by the evils that awaited us in days to come. Whole and unblemished likewise, free from all alloy, steadfast and blissful, were the spectacles on which we gazed in the moment of final revelation. Pure was the light that shone around us, and pure were we, without taint of that prison house which now we are encompassed withal, and call a body, fast bound therein as an oyster in its shell." Some souls, having not recently been initiated into that vision, mistake the reflection for the thing itself, and chase after physical pleasure alone. Such desire, even when it centers on attractive bodies, is not divine madness, but simply folly. Those more recently initiated, however, are overwhelmed when they see a bodily form that captures a glimpse of the eternal. Their wings begin to form again. In gazing at the beautiful youth, they feel a joy unlike any other. When apart, they suffer intense longing and anguish, and their wings begin to harden from the pain. Torn between bliss and agony, the lover finds no relief except in the presence of the beloved. Socrates then returns to the image of the chariot. The charioteer burns with longing as he looks into the eyes of the beloved. The noble horse holds back out of reverence and shame, but the ignoble horse, ruled by appetite, tries to drag them toward the youth and entices them with thoughts of sensual pleasure. Eventually, this unruly horse exhausts both charioteer and companion, pulling them close. But when the charioteer again meets the boy's gaze, his memory flies back to the vision of beauty and temperance once seen in the company of the gods, and he yanks the reins in resistance. This inner struggle repeats again and again, until finally the bad horse, overcome by fear of that divine vision, submits and dies away. The soul of the lover is then able to follow the beloved with reverence and awe. The lover now begins to pursue the youth in earnest. If the beloved returns his affection, the chance for physical intimacy arises once more. But if both resist this urge, they are victorious in what Socrates calls the true Olympic games, a union of divine madness and human discipline. When they die, their souls rise together back into the heavens. Those who do not resist are not granted flight, but they also suffer no punishment. In time, they too will grow wings together. Socrates concludes that the bond of a lover is sacred, while that of a non-lover brings only fleeting, earthly rewards and keeps the soul wandering for 9,000 years. He offers a final prayer to the gods, asking pardon for any earlier missteps, and Phaedrus joins him in his supplication. The charioteer allegory thus reflects Plato's understanding of love, which he sees as a form of divine madness or theomania. In this sense, love is a reflection of the soul's yearning for the forms and the highest truths, motivating the soul to pursue enlightenment despite the difficulties it faces in controlling its passions. In addition to his famous allegory of the cave and the charioteer, Plato also presents the idea of acquiring knowledge through the ladder of love in the Symposium. In the dialogue, multiple speakers present their speech in praise of love. Socrates tells a story he was told by a wise woman called Diotima. Unlike the other guests who speak of love as a god, Diotima insists that love is neither divine nor fully mortal, but something in between, a daimon, a spirit that mediates between gods and humans. She recounts a myth to illustrate this. During a banquet celebrating the birth of Aphrodite, Poros, the god of resourcefulness and plenty, became drunk on nectar and fell asleep. Peneia, the goddess of poverty, saw him lying unconscious and, seeking to escape her destitution, lay with him. From this union, love, Eros, was conceived. Born on the day of Aphrodite's birth, love becomes her eternal companion and servant. Yet due to his parentage, love inherits a dual nature. From Peneia, he receives poverty, neediness, and homelessness. From Poros, he gains cunning, energy, and the capacity to seek beauty and wisdom. This double inheritance defines love's essence. He is always in pursuit, never in possession. He is not wise, but not ignorant either. Rather, he stands between wisdom and ignorance, knowing enough to desire what he lacks. Diotima then challenges Socrates, asking why, if love is for the beautiful. As Socrates had agreed, only some people pursue beauty throughout their lives. Socrates has no answer, so Diotima reveals a deeper truth. Beauty is not the ultimate goal, but the path to something greater, immortality. In the mortal world, the closest we can come to immortality is through reproduction. All creatures, both human and animal, are driven to give birth, to pass on their form, their essence. But not all reproduction is physical. Some people are pregnant not only in body, but also in soul. These individuals seek to give birth to ideas, to wisdom, to virtue. They are guided by beauty, not merely the beauty of the body, but beauty in soul, in laws, in knowledge, and finally, in being itself. As Plato writes, if someone got to see the beautiful itself, absolute, pure, unmixed, not polluted by human flesh or colors or any other great nonsense of mortality, but if he could see the divine beauty itself in its one form, do you think it would be a poor life for a human being to look there and to behold it by that which he ought, and to be with it? Or haven't you remembered that in that life alone, when he looks at beauty in the only way what beauty can be seen, only then will it become possible for him to give birth no to images of virtue, but to true virtue. The love of the gods belongs to anyone who has given birth to true virtue and nourished it, and if any human being could become immortal, it would be he. In conclusion, Diotima gives Socrates a guide on how a man ascends to this kind of love. The first rung on the ladder of love is the attraction to a beautiful body. At this stage, the lover is drawn to physical beauty, focusing on the most immediate and obvious form of love. However, as the lover begins to reflect, they come to realize that the beauty they see in a single body is not unique. It is shared by all beautiful bodies. This realization moves the lover to the next step, the appreciation of all beautiful bodies, rather than being fixated on one. As the lover continues this journey, they begin to understand that physical beauty alone is not enough to satisfy their desires. The lover must then shift their focus to a deeper kind of beauty, the beauty of souls. Upon reflecting further, the lover understands that the beauty of the body alone cannot bring lasting fulfillment. Thus, the lover's passion is redirected from the external and transient beauty of the body to the inner, enduring beauty of the soul. Next, the lover's journey leads them to the beauty of laws and institutions. Having realized the importance of the soul, the lover's love now extends to the structures that nurture and sustain beautiful souls, a just, harmonious, and moderate social order. From here, the lover's focus deepens further to encompass the beauty of knowledge itself, as it is knowledge that allows one to create and understand such institutions. This transition represents a shift from the love of physical beauty and human connection to the love of intellectual and philosophical understanding. At the final rung, the lover arrives at the highest and purest form of love, the love of beauty itself. This is the form of beauty, an eternal and unchanging essence that is not tied to any specific beautiful object, person, or concept. Plato describes this as a wondrous vision, an everlasting loveliness that is beyond the transient world of the senses. It exists independently, not as flesh, words, or knowledge, but as the pure, eternal essence that all beautiful things partake in. This is the ultimate realization for the lover, the final destination of the ascent from physical attraction to the profound understanding of beauty itself. Plato writes, "He who would proceed in due course should love first one fair form, and then many, and learn the connection of them, and from beautiful bodies he should proceed to beautiful minds, and the beauty of laws and institutions, until he perceives that all beauty is of one kindred, and from institutions he should go on to the sciences, until at last the vision is revealed to him of a single science of universal beauty, and then he will behold the everlasting nature which is the cause of all, and will be near the end. In the contemplation of that supreme being of love, he will be purified of earthly leaven, and will behold beauty, not with the bodily eye, but with the eye of the mind, and will bring forth true creations of virtue and wisdom. True love is therefore the love of the good, and wisdom and virtue is how the soul embodies it in the world. For Diotima, to be limited only to bodily reproduction is a kind of tragedy. Such a person remains tethered to the lower form of beauty, unable to ascend to the contemplation of beauty itself. The one who gives birth only in flesh remains far from the eternal. Diotima even suggests that the idea of a mortal having direct access to pure being is comical, because it is impossible. And yet, in the highest form of love, through the soul's creation of true virtue, one comes as close as a mortal can to immortality. This means that this place of eternal truth is forever beyond our reach, at least in our current mortal state. This is why the philosopher is not someone who has wisdom, but someone who loves it. The philosopher is the one who understands that true wisdom cannot be possessed, it can only be pursued. Socrates, the wisest man in Athens, was wise not because he knew more than others, but because he knew that he was ignorant. Contrast this with the sophist, whose very name, sophists, derived from Sophia, wisdom, suggests a claim to knowledge. The sophist claims to possess wisdom, but in doing so, reveals his ignorance. The philosopher, by contrast, seeks wisdom while knowing that it can never be fully attained. It is precisely because he accepts his ignorance that the philosopher is able to seek. The one who knows, like the sophist, has no need to seek, because he is deluded, and he thinks he is already wise. Accepting our ignorance puts us in a position where we begin asking questions, and it is through constant questioning, through constant examination of our ignorance, that we start getting closer to truth. This is why Plato wrote in Dialogues, because this is the only way to truly live, through constant questioning, through never-ending battle against ignorance. Those who do not accept their ignorance are conquered by darkness, as ignorance blinds them to the light of truth. They are the ones who mistake shadows for reality, and their beliefs and opinions make them blind, while those who are aware of their ignorance are able to battle the darkness, because they are the ones who are in pursuit of light. Accepting one is ignorant is, in my opinion, the most important step in pursuit of truth. If our opinions prevent us from seeing, recognizing our ignorance opens our eyes. However, even after seeing the light, even after glimpsing the truth, the philosopher returns to the cave, not because he doesn't want to live outside the cave, in the brightness of truth, but exactly because he has seen the light, and understands that he can't remain forever, because his place is still among the shadows. It is precisely this encounter with the highest truth that reveals the limits of human understanding. He knows now that wisdom is not a possession but a calling. We should recall the chariot allegory, which says that only the gods, who are immortal and perfect, are able to stay in this realm of light for eternity and feast on this perfect wisdom, while we, mortal and imperfect, can get a glimpse of this perfection, but we are always pulled back down into the realm of shadows. The philosopher lives between the light and the shadows, drawn by love of the light, but bound by the nature of human existence to dwell among shadows. This is the humility at the heart of Platonic philosophy. The journey is never complete, the search never ends. But in the very act of seeking, of returning to the cave and living among the shadows with knowledge of the light, the philosopher becomes a bridge between truth and the world. Just as Socrates nears the end of his speech, the symposium is abruptly interrupted by the dramatic entrance of Alcibiades, drunk and boisterous. Bursting in, he quickly draws the attention of everyone in the room. Though inebriated and late to the gathering, Alcibiades, a strikingly handsome and well-known Athenian statesman, demands to speak. What follows is not a praise of love, as the others have given, but a panegyric dedicated to Socrates himself. Alcibiades, once a rising star of Athenian politics and beauty, begins by acknowledging that despite all his attempts, he has never succeeded in seducing Socrates. No matter how boldly he offered himself, Socrates never showed any interest in physical pleasure. Even now, when Alcibiades finds himself sharing a couch with both Socrates and the beautiful Agathon, he jokes bitterly that Socrates has once again managed to place himself next to the most attractive man in the room. Turning to Agathon, Socrates playfully asks for protection from Alcibiades' jealousy. The mood is light, but there is tension beneath the surface. When Alcibiades learns that the others have been taking turns offering speeches in praise of love, he scoffs at Socrates' contribution and hopes no one takes it seriously. Nevertheless, he offers his own kind of speech, not about love itself, but about the man who, in his eyes, most embodies its strange and divine character. He begins with a powerful image. Socrates, he says, is like a statue of Silenus, the grotesque, hollow figurines that, when opened, reveal golden statues of gods hidden inside. On the outside, Socrates appears strange, unattractive, even laughable, like a satyr with beastly features and crude mannerisms. But within, Alcibiades claims, lies unmatched beauty, wisdom, and divinity. He is the only person whose words have ever pierced Alcibiades' soul. When Socrates speaks, Alcibiades says, he is shaken to his core, feeling that his life, privileged and celebrated though it may be, is no better than a slave's. It is Socrates alone who has made him feel true shame. Despite his philosophical admiration, Alcibiades also confesses a deep sexual desire for Socrates. Believing himself the pursuer, he approached Socrates as one might approach a beautiful youth, hoping for an intimate relationship. But Socrates never yielded. Alcibiades, confused and humiliated, recounts how he even offered himself outright, telling Socrates that nothing mattered more to him now than becoming virtuous, and that Socrates, possessing true wisdom, was the one best suited to help him. Socrates, in response, asked why he should exchange the real beauty of the soul he possessed for the mere outward beauty of Alcibiades' body. In that moment, Alcibiades recognized Socrates' profound detachment from bodily pleasure. Socrates gave no response to his advances, not because he lacked affection, but because he sought something far greater than carnal desire. Alcibiades, shamed by his failure and by the greatness of Socrates' inner life, spent a night lying beside him without ever touching him. He calls it the deepest humiliation of his life. Yet Alcibiades' speech is more than just a tale of failed seduction. It becomes a testimony to Socrates' extraordinary character. He recounts their experiences together in battle, where Socrates displayed unmatched courage and calm, immune to fear, hunger, and cold. He would spend nights barefoot, wrapped in the same simple cloak through winter cold and summer heat alike, unaffected by hunger, thirst, or exhaustion. Alcibiades recalls a particularly cold winter during the campaign at Potidaea, when others huddled for warmth. Socrates alone, barefoot on the frost-bound ground, stood in silent contemplation from morning until the following day, motionless, lost in thought, impervious to the freezing air. While others marveled, he seemed oblivious to the spectacle he created. On one occasion, Socrates even saved Alcibiades' life, yet refused to accept any honors for it. In every way, Socrates is unlike other men. His thoughts, his way of life, his indifference to pleasure and pain, his devotion to wisdom and virtue. For Alcibiades, he is a man beyond comparison, greater than any living or legendary hero. Through this unexpected praise, Plato completes the image of Socrates not only as the lover of wisdom Diotima described, but as someone who arouses longing in others precisely because of the divine beauty hidden beneath his ordinary, even absurd, appearance. Socrates becomes the embodiment of philosophy itself, elusive, transformative, immune to corruption, and irresistibly compelling to those who truly see him. As the night wears on, the symposium descends into revelry, becoming increasingly wild and drunken. One by one, the main guests take their leave and head home. Aristodemus, the narrator of the story, eventually drifts off to sleep. When he wakes the next morning and prepares to depart, he finds Socrates still wide awake, deep in conversation with Agathon and Aristophanes. Socrates is explaining that a truly gifted playwright should be capable of writing both comedy and tragedy with equal skill. As Agathon and Aristophanes finally doze off, Socrates calmly gets up, walks to the Lyceum to bathe, and proceeds with his day as if nothing unusual had happened, only returning home to sleep the next evening. This is why Socrates is the true philosopher, because he seeks wisdom and virtue in their purest form, in the soul. As Plato said in Phaedrus, the soul is the first principle, the source of all motion, it exists eternally, and it is more real than the material world, which is just an image of the true reality behind it. It is the soul that gives us the ability to experience the world, and Plato recognized this. This metaphysical position is called idealism, and Plato is the first true idealist in the history of Western thought. Which means that for Plato, the realm of mind and ideas is more real than the world we see around us. As we explored in the first video, for Plato, the soul, or psyche, and mind are inseparable, they are the same thing. So if there were no souls, we couldn't see anything, it would be nothingness, blank, empty, which means that life is reality. Without the soul there is no reality. Without the experience of life, nothing can be real. It is experience that makes reality real. Which is why the soul comes before reality. In fact, the soul is reality. This is why a philosopher is detached from the material world, because he sees reality for what it is. The philosopher is lost in his thoughts, because this is where all possible knowledge and truth resides. In couple of dialogues, for example in Republic, Phaedrus, and Protagoras, Plato shows us how a person like this is often misunderstood by society, even perceived as mad. But what's really happening is that the philosopher sees beyond appearances. He sees how ignorance blinds people to the deeper reality that lies beneath the surface. The philosopher is, above all, a true lover, not in the physical sense, but in the deepest, most transcendent way. His love is not for bodies, wealth, or status, but for the eternal, for the divine. This is also where Plato's philosophy begins to reveal its religious character. It isn't merely a system of thought, it is a way of life. Everything Plato ever wrote must be seen through the lens of experience. Because ultimately, all words, all theories, all concepts, whether philosophical, scientific, religious, or artistic, are rooted in experience. They are different expressions of the same fundamental reality, life itself. That's why I chose to include the final part of the symposium in this video, the part where Alcibiades enters. Often, people focus on Diotima's speech as the key to understanding love, but Alcibiades' appearance is just as important, perhaps even more so. It shows us how Socrates, led by perfect love, manifests wisdom and virtue in the world. His soul is aware of its divine origin. It remembers what it is. This is why knowledge, for Plato, is not something we acquire from outside. It is something we recover from within. We know because we are alive. Knowledge flows from the very fact of existence. To live, to experience, to be conscious. This is not metaphor. It is not poetic exaggeration. It is literally true. Everything we speak about only matters because it participates in life. Knowledge is life. Philosophy is life. Science is life. All of it unfolds within the experience of living. And all life in this world comes from the universe itself. Which means that when all life is taken together, every experience, every soul, every thought, it forms the great soul of the universe. Everything that has ever happened is happening within this soul. And to live properly, we must align ourselves with life, with the great soul, or being itself, or God. These are just different names for the same thing. Plato speaks of the same reality that the Bible speaks of, that all religions and philosophies speak of, only in different languages, with different symbols. What they are all pointing to is life itself. Existence itself. To understand existence is to understand everything. But this understanding does not come through theories or systems. It comes through living, through being, through embodying the truth in the way we live. Because there is only one truth we can never doubt, the fact that we exist. And all theories, all knowledge, all practices are only meaningful if they help us exist more fully, more truthfully. This is the essence of Plato's message. This is the divine, the origin of life, the source of all things. It is that nothingness we explored in the previous video. It is the eternal, the unchanging, the place from which all forms, justice, beauty, virtue, emerge. And it is to this source that all things, including ourselves, must one day return.